Welcome to Season 2 of OnListening. This is your host, Daniel Rosen. Thank you for joining us as we continue to explore listening in all its dimensions. Continue listening after the interview is over for some information about engagement with the show. Thank you. June 6th, 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic and protests, a Black Lives Matter protest at downtown Rochester. I was privileged that 4 people were willing to be interviewed by me and help represent voices from the protest, particularly with the aspect of what it means to be listening. A young woman named Ray, who follows in her father's footsteps, was with us. And then I interviewed a husband-wife team, the Delgados, fascinating people with a lot to say. And then a biker, Mr. Nieves, who is in an interracial biking club and talked about listening. I really enjoyed that these people were willing to take their time during this event, and the sound effects in the background are just remarkable. What you're hearing, the reason it's quiet now, is you're catching me a little bit afterwards putting this together. The experience of the voice of the person of color was what really came through to me today. In quotes, I Can't Breathe and Black Lives Matter. It was very moving. I found that the experience of interviewing people deepened the meaning for me of what they had to say. I was quite touched by that. I had a lot of trouble understanding what the words that the organizers used. It was obviously crowded, and I didn't want to be too close because of the pandemic, so I was at the periphery, and despite the use of megaphones, it was hard to understand what people were saying. But it was very moving, the chanting and the people with better hearing than I who knew exactly what was being said. Clearly, this protest is trying to be listened to, but I was also interested in the inspirations for people of who were the great people in their lives that inspired them to listen so much. And so we're going to interweave these interviews for this episode of On Listening. Thank you so much for joining.
Hello, my name is Ray.
Thank you, Ray, for being interviewed. So, my podcast is On Listening. What is it that, obviously the sort of the cry, I Can't Breathe, is about listening. It's about listening to Black people, people of color. What would you like to say about that?
I would like to say that white people need to be more listening with the movement, and they need to stop talking about the riots and the looting and stuff, because that's not what this is about. This is about Black and brown people getting discriminated against, losing their lives, and the systematic racism that we are dealing with.
Thank you. What are some of the inspirations? What have you listened to that's helped you better understand what's going on?
Well, actually, my dad is in his 70s, so my inspiration is my dad. He grew up during segregation, so he told me about his experiences, what he dealt with. He got hosed, and he used to be in marches.
Oh, that's such an inspiration. That's fantastic. So now you're sharing this crazy thing of marching during a pandemic. That's lovely. You think he'd be proud of you for this?
Yes, he's still alive. So yeah, I still talk to him. He's actually very proud of me.
Fantastic. What is it like for you when you listen to either the voices of other protesters or you watch these incredibly disturbing videos? What is it like for you to listen?
Very painful. I usually cry about when I watch the videos or I hear experiences from other activists or protesters.
Yes, so you let it get into you. What do you think you started by saying that white people need to?
Yes.
What is it that what do you think gets in the way?
Biases, or just they don't understand because they don't have to deal with certain things. So it's a different point of view.
My name is Julio Nieves. How are you?
Very good, thank you. What would you like to say about listening as it pertains to the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, really, listening is one of the most important acts that we all can partake in, and just the act of listening to one another, but right now, it is so important that we're listening to those who are up there leading this Black Lives Matter movement, those who are speaking, the Black Lives community, also the other voices that have been oppressed for so long, the brown community, black community, the LGBTQA plus community. So again, thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. So I have to say, you are wearing, part of the reason I approached you is you have a really unique vest on.
All right.
And I wanted to know if there was, as I try to listen to the patches on your vest, what would I be learning about you?
So I'm part of a motorcycle riding group, which we have SOAR, which is Shades of America Riders, and so we're a diverse group. We seek to be diverse. Right now, it's made up of predominantly Latino and Spanish riders, but we're open to others. They're very active within the community. I'm very proud of my brothers and sisters from SOAR. So I'm happy to be the secretary and also chaplain. So yeah.
Fantastic. Who has inspired you? Do you have people that you've listened to or inspired you about listening?
About listening?
Yeah.
So also one who graduated from Northeastern Seminary. Looking at some theologians like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, but let's see. There's a handful of names, and my apologies, I have so much.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. I want you to just off-the-cuff interview. What else would you like to say about listening?
If there's anything, just people. One, we need to listen to one another. I don't care who we are. Two, right now, let's pay attention to the voices that are trying to scream for justice and for peace. And unfortunately, at times, that when the voices aren't being heard, I think that's when, as one of the speakers shared, the opposite of peace happens. It's not that that's war, or it's more that this is disruption, and people are trying to push harder and harder for their voices to be heard. That Black Lives Matter, that people of color and brown, black lives are being are at risk at a higher level than So thank you for continuing.
All right. Thank you so much, and good luck with the club.
Thank you.
Take care. You're welcome.
Dara Delgado.
Ivan Delgado.
Ivan,
Yes.
thank you so much. When we think about listening to black voices, what would either of you like to say about that idea of listening to black voices, or more intersectionally, listening to black female voices? I'm happy to record either one of you starting on that.
One of the first things that we heard at today's protest was, and I'm paraphrasing, no one is a better specialist on the topic than the person who's living the experience. And so when we're talking about listening, the exercise is not only listening audibly with our ears in terms of protest movements or podcasts or different songs and the arts, but also listening through how we read. What are we sitting with? And anti-racist things, women's gender or sexuality. Who are you sitting and listening to so that they can tell you about their experience and the lived experience of what it is to be in the margins, on the intersections? And in that, you're choosing to come alongside, right? Because when people...
You're saying the act of listening is joining with the person?
It's partnering. It's community. When you feel heard, you're validated. And the issue with particularly the Black Lives Matter movement and the struggle of anti-black racism in the United States has been the dehumanization of the black person. And so when you take a moment to listen, you're validating not only their experience, but their humanity.
Thank you. I love that. Did you want to say?
It is very important to listen, because, especially for our elected officials. They need to listen. If their true intention is to serve the people, they need to listen. But not just, like she said, passive listening, but active listening. Listening with the intention of doing something. How do you pretend to serve the people if you don't understand their needs and their concerns? So it is very important for all of our officials from the top down to listen to what the black community, to what the gay community, the Hispanic community, all diverse communities, because we live in a diverse world, all diverse communities. You need to listen to those voices if your true intention is to serve them effectively.
Thank you so much. Now, I don't know you too well, So I agree with what you're saying. And what you talk about sounds very simple. Talk to someone who has the lived experience and listen to the people so you can serve them. So I'm going to... Why does this not... Right? It sounds simple, but it's not happening. What do you think happens that interferes with listening?
It really is the need to be right. I mean, we're talking about a systemic issue. We're not talking about individualized racism or individualized sexism. We're talking about the fact that there is a system built on only certain voices matter, only certain individuals get to say what is good, what is bad, get to hold leadership positions, whatever. So the reason why I think it's an issue, a very simple solution for a very seemingly problematic or complex issue, is because it's literally a system that we're trying to deconstruct, a system that requires more voices at the table, diverse thought, different people group, folks outside of the norm, folks from the margins. This is something we're not used to. What we're talking about is a larger systemic issue where folks in the minority are silenced. And what we are advocating is for a deconstruction of that system so that we can do this very simple thing of coming alongside and listening, right? More voices at the table means that we get to hear different perspectives.
Great.
Just wanted to add that perhaps the reason why change doesn't take place is because, you hear these days when people issue calls for back to normalcy or they get things back to normal. People don't like when their system is disturbed. So the whole idea of disturbing the system we have been functioning in for so many years, and almost the overwhelming task of recreating a new system, people don't want to deal with that. People don't want to rebuild something. Like some people say, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But the reality in America is that, and in all the world, is that it is broken indeed, and it needs to be fixed.
Okay, fantastic. Who taught you, who are your inspirations for listening?
I mean, if you want to talk popular, it would be someone like Cornel West. I particularly am interested in Black theology movements, so Dolores S. Williams, James Cone is a big person for me. Oh my gosh, I can't go very far without talking about Bell Hooks when I think about feminist issues, particularly Black feminist issues. A new voice for me is Tamura Lomax. She also does some Black feminist religious thought. So these folks have helped me do some intersections around faith, gender, sexuality, and religion. And race in terms of how to think about and listen to folks in my immediate community and outside of it.
Cornell, back in 1984, Cornell came to campus. I think it was James Washington who brought him, professor of theology, edited Martin Luther King's selected writings.
Yes.
That was one of the most moving and powerful.
I can imagine.
Cornell rocked it.
He's still rocking.
He's still. What an inspiration.
I mean, what is his quote, right? Justice is love, like done in public or in public. Yeah, I mean, we have to live by that. We're talking about listening. We're listening in public right now. And
then he just came to RIT and talked with a conservative, political Catholic theologian and. That's
eviscerated.
What their talk was about how we have to keep talking, like we keep talking, even when we disagree.
Right.
It was beautiful. Yes, of course you say eviscerated, but the other dude's friends might say that. Right. Oh, great. What are your, Mr. Delgado, your inspirations for listening?
Well, one of my inspirations for listening is this young Black scholar I have in front of me, Dr. Delgado.
Yes.
I really, I'm an engineer by training, but I'm an engineer, also a musician. So you could say I use both parts of the brain, and she helps me nourish that artistic side of the brain, and from the experience of living with her, I have learned to listen to other voices and to, and just to investigate all other points of view and understand the point of view of the other, because not everybody is like me. So I also reflect on some people have the fear that if I learn about the other, I may become like the other, but you don't have to.
That's the very I'm talking to the pros here, because that was the question I've been nurturing in my head that I wanted to ask, and was thinking, I don't know these people, I don't know if I can ask this, but that's the risk. That's why if listening involves the vulnerability that you're going to be transformed, then of course you don't want to listen. How do we deal with the fact that you both know that listening means you might transform? So how do you talk to a white nationalist as a person of color if without the prerequisite, I expect you to dismantle your belief system? Is that possible? How do you do that?
I think there's a misunderstanding of the request, because it's not that I expect you to be like me. I expect you to understand me, because the reality is we are living together. There's not a white planet, there's not a black planet, there's not a Hispanic planet, there's not many planets. Well, maybe they are, but it's not realistically impossible in our lifetime to each one of us have our own planet like Star Wars. It is not realistic. So we need to deal with the reality that we live together, and we better, whether you like it or not, we need to understand each other. I need to understand the point of view of people with diverse sexual orientations, religious beliefs other than mine, because I live with them, I work with them, and there's some common ground always, and we need to learn to coexist in that common ground without that meaning the annihilation of the other.
Perfect.
We have good times at home.
Have I inspired either one of you to say another thing?
Black Lives Matter.
Right? Listening to the voice, yes.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. So I can find you, Doctor. You're a professor at...
Yes. So I actually will be joining the faculty at Allegheny College in Meadville, Pennsylvania this fall, where I'll be in the Department of Religious Studies and Philosophy, contributing to Black Studies program, Women and Sexualities program, and Community Justice. So, yes.
It's an honor to interview you. I'm so happy. I was a religion major in Oberlin, and it was great. So listen, I would love to call you up, talk about listening to spirituality, listening to spirit, and there's so much. Congratulations. Good luck with that position. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that concludes another episode from Season 2 of OnListening. Thank you for joining us. Please check out our webpage, onlistening.net, and subscribe. Please leave reviews on your favorite podcasting site. It helps me make a name for this. I don't have corporate sponsorship, and all my guests are providing their time free, so there's no way to advertise this program other than word of mouth and your ratings. Email me, comments or questions, dan@onlistening.net. Thank you so much for joining again. Take care.